Okay, so hi, welcome back to the Noah Presgrove, the latest discussions on the matter, and I think we need to somewhat go over the recent outburst, or other words, backlash behind Kaden Pressy's part 1 interview. Maybe it doesn't correlate to YouTube, but possibly Facebook. Now, there was a few comments on my live chat when I did it at the time, the analysis. People were warning me, don't go over to Facebook or be careful what you post or comment. If you disagree or go against what Kaden Pressy said or interpret it in a negative way, you will be attacked. Now, I don't know how true that is or how extreme it can be. I normally don't post, so I should be okay. I normally keep to myself for most part of it. But I think the best way to summarize everything that's going on is possibly disagreements and / or misunderstandings, which can go hand in hand together, can cross over, or simply by themselves, which run parallel in the direction of a form of conflict, right? These are testing times. Just like the testing times recently where I've been attacked by random people to most of you in the community of Noah Presgrove, but those attacking me are also linked with the odd YouTuber that you may know of, right? I've said my thing, but gotta keep moving forwards, not in a positive way, but this is what I'm doing. I'm doing YouTube, I'm making videos, I'm covering cases. There's no real reason to stop. Need to move forwards, need to focus. And it was perfect. It really was perfect. Despite some people badgering on, and I don't mean badger. Badgering is another term for people yapping at me. Oh, can you give me this? Can you give me that? Master, where are you? Calm down, okay? It's under control. I'm dealing with important matters at this pressing time. Oh, Master, I don't want to wait. I'm a really impetuous person. I'm really busy. Me. Give me the link now. Give me the link. Hold on. Be a good little individual, and good things come to those who wait. And that's what happened. But besides that, whilst me juggling multiple pots on my hands, it was good to see the amount of people that showed up to that interview analysis. Now, I've done them in the past, Dylan rounds. A handful of people showed up, nowhere near as many as it has been within the Noah Presgrove case. So when I do certain videos and themes, I know what works, what doesn't. But even the stuff that doesn't work can be important, and it will be covered nevertheless, okay? The video that I did tonight, although shorter, it was for good reason, because there was only so much to talk about, right? I can do short videos when there is a time and a need to do so, okay? What I have learned is, and people in the background could say, yes, but you need to do long videos. You need to try really hard. By the way, I'm sick of doing long videos. I'm tired of this. I want a short, long content. I've had enough. I've got a short attention span. Well, good for you. So the thing is, I've done short videos in recent time, okay? Average watch duration plummeted. I can do a 5-minute video and people may only watch for 30 seconds on average. But I'm talking about completely different content away from what regular viewers watch, right? What I'm getting at is long format videos work. They work. And I've seen it. That's just my counterpoint to those that whine and yap about shorter videos are needed. No, they're not, because when I do it, it does not work. I've been there, I've done it, it doesn't work. You need to put more edits into your videos, okay? I've done that, it didn't work. This is what I do, this is what works. Simple as. And as we've seen, the amount of people that have showed up in recent time, especially the Kaden Pressy interview, it did work. People did listen in, or at least that's what it appeared to be. That's all good. Maybe not everybody saw it the same way. Maybe there was some disagreements in a way. I mean, when I was looking at the comments, some regular viewers were saying how, wow, When I watched it first time round, I never heard it mentioned like that. I don't remember it being worded like that, but when rewatching it, now I've picked up on it. Oh, Ref, how did you notice it so quick? You know, things like that. See, this is the thing. The reason why I can do what I do is because I've analysed humans intensely for some time and over a brief spell of 2021. We don't need to get too much into that, but believe me, when you go all in and you go to the depths, when you get there, after that, should be under control. Should be predictable with humans. Language, wording, believe me, when I say about analysing language and wording, I went to extreme depths in other ways. So from then, I can apply now with cases, how people talk, how people respond. And whilst humans aren't perfect, if there are inconsistencies or mistakes made or slip of the tongues or contradictions, I can guarantee you I will pick up on it at some point. And then once I pick up on it, I may see more and more and more, right? It's just how it goes. The more experience you've got, the easier it is to pick up on that stuff. Now, maybe what also ties in line with this backlash behind the Kaden Pressy interview is an emotional connection which people have towards him. Maybe not family members, maybe not friends, strangers online, but they feel they've got a personal connection, a bond, or they've got a level of trust, deep trust within Kaden as the shining beacon within the case. And, you know, that's understandable. So that when anyone else may take that light away, people get defensive and people fight back and stand up. Okay, fair enough. Did my video do that? Not really, but maybe people's own post and comments on Facebook, there could have been some disagreements and some, you know, back and forth. Not the end of the world, but it depends where it goes from here, because you got the Kaden Pressy interview part 2, I think next Tuesday. What comes out of that? What's going to be talked about? Questions or continuing on from what he was talking about? In fairness, I would assume that it continues on, because in part 1 there was no proper ending. It just ended abruptly whilst they were still talking in the background. So hopefully it continues on. As we saw in part 1, there were jump cuts, right? It was edited. Was key information edited out? Like, oh, I'm not allowed to say this, I shouldn't have said that. It is an attorney involved in the background advising what can and can't be said. So then partners in true crime have to make adjustments. Maybe there was significant amount of jump cuts than in Justin Roy's interview, right? So was more said accidentally in Kaden's interview, which wasn't supposed to be mentioned, hence why it was cut out? Possibly. But you've also got the possibilities of breaking down, getting a bit emotional, because you saw he was trying to hold it together in the interview. So maybe at certain points he needed time to breathe, take it in, cool down, whatever, take his time. But the YouTube channel thought, well, we don't want too many pauses or silences. We want it to be a consistent flow, with it being a podcast style interview, something people can listen to, and it has a smooth flow with not many disruptions or interruptions. So I'd get that for editing, getting rid of all the gaps and the pauses and making it with a better even flow. But, you know, if you're watching it and you see it visually on screen, you can see the jump cuts, and it could make you think, oh, what did we miss out on? Was there something very important mentioned or about to be mentioned and now it's been retracted? You know, it can make people double think themselves, question. It is what it is. But, you know, where do we even start? Because I've been hovering about this situation, about this backlash. How serious is it? Not that serious, but I guess there are disagreements and people see it in different ways with the podcast interview itself. I mean, I can give you it from my opinion, because humans seem to be very desperate in terms of wanting to know what I think. So what I say, my opinion, will also kind of speak on behalf of what others think too. For Kaden Pressy, who is of a much younger age compared to the likes of Justin Roy, for Kaden to have been at the party to witness what's happened and the tragic unfolding events with his friend Noah and see it firsthand, and then have to retell the story all over again, which can be tiring, draining, demanding, and somewhat upsetting. Kaden did a good job, even appearing in the interview in the first place, being present, talking, and doing the best he can. So that was positive there. Was he consistent, though? No. Is it the end of the world? Not really. But if there are inconsistencies, or it can be interpreted as inconsistencies because of the changing of language and wording. To say he went to sleep at 3 a.m. in his original statement would imply going to sleep for the first time since whenever, which was maybe a day ago or many, 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 many hours ago. You get what I'm saying? But within that interview, Kaden said, I went to sleep at 2 a.m, woke up because of that phone call, 2:43. Only 43 minutes of sleep, waking back up, and then eventually drifting back off to sleep, which was closer to 3 a.m. as what he stated in his Facebook post at the time. But what he should have said, was, back then in his original Facebook statement was, I went back to sleep at 3 a.m. after being previously disrupted out of my original sleep time, which was starting at 2 a.m. If it was worded a bit like that and it was elaborated on more, that would have been great. Or in other ways, in that recent interview, Kaden could have said, yeah, I went to sleep 2 a.m, woke up at 2:43. It was close to 3 a.m. It reminds me of what I stated on my Facebook post back then. I just forgot to mention about going to sleep the first time round an hour before, and then waking up close to 3 a.m. and then going back off to sleep after that point. That would have really helped, okay? As said, language and wording is important in many different ways. If it's used incorrectly, it can have major implications on things. It could be detrimental to a case, detrimental to one's trust within another, in many different ways. The reason why I'm still here on YouTube, despite being one of the most attacked individuals out there, is because I'm using appropriate language and wording, or at least trying to, for most part of it. Other humans don't bother. The rest out there, outsiders, can be very reckless. So when you do get those wannabe YouTube channels, they've got a certain shelf lifespan because of how they conduct themselves. It's not in the appropriate way. They mess up, they slip up, and there are consequences. Simple as. So, got to be careful. Now, this is the thing. Was there any other inconsistencies with Kaden? I guess it's because of how it's been told the story by other people. You don't want it to cross on over with what Kaden knows or what he doesn't mention. Arguably what he doesn't mention is possibly because he didn't see or hear it, but I'm just surprised he didn't make any reference about it at least. See, this is the thing. When it came to Justin Roy, whilst he might have said, well, some said this, some said that, I heard this, he said that to me. A lot of he said, she said BS, but it doesn't matter. It's important. It's giving a source, crediting where it came from, acknowledging the knowledge of possible information or maybe misinformation or even disinformation, at least bringing it to the light and acknowledging it so you're aware, that they're aware, and we're all on the same page. Kaden Pressy didn't have to see something in order to make reference to it, right? Kaden still could have said, yeah, there was some argument, or there was claims of an argument from what I heard at the party, or from what people are mentioning online. I know the interview is supposed to be all about Kaden and what he knows of the events, what he saw, etc. That's consistent there in terms of what he's focusing on, but there's no harm in giving the odd reference to this or that by mentioning, you know, I've heard this mentioned, but I didn't see it myself. What he does, he just doesn't mention it at all. And by not mentioning it at all, no acknowledgement whatsoever, it's like it didn't happen, right? I mean, it's a bit of the reverse way around, but when it came to Kaden talking about Noah Presgrove Sunday morning, how Noah met up with Jack, Kaden, was it Isaac, Avery, Carter, Brylan, and whoever else, right? Went out to that Warwicker gas station to eat breakfast, with it being morning time. There's not much significance behind that, right, when you hear of it now. But why wasn't it mentioned back then? Oh, because it's not important. So the unimportant stuff wasn't mentioned back then, but it's mentioned now. Yeah, it's been mentioned now because, well, it's important to Kaden Pressy in terms of telling the story as to what happened, when and what. And if people did say, well, certain events are only being talked about now because they weren't important back then, so why are they suddenly important now? If people in general in the community are all about the facts, the storyline, the timeline, then every single detail should matter, no matter how big or small. Even if it's the time of when someone goes to the toilet to do a number 2, that's important because then you know where they are, what they're doing, because it might be at the time something bad is going on. Just in general, you need to know where everyone is at a certain time, right? If everybody's all in one room, but there is one individual missing, and that's the time of when someone's murdered, well, you could say they're the odd man, odd woman out, and then you would look into them and question them, right? So I think it is important. If details are mentioned now, which may not be seen as important or big of a deal, but they're only mentioned now, but not then, that's important, and it raises questions as to why it's only talked about now. Oh no, I think a spider's disappeared. Oh no. There was a spider down there, but I can't see it, so I don't know where it's gone. Why does this always happen? Oh, so distracting. Because I don't want a spider crawling over me. But yeah, the odd comment, like people just giving their own opinions, saying, you know, okay, they hung out Sunday morning together, eating, Noah with Jack, etc. And I'm like, yeah, but this is significant. This shows there's a shorter amount of time, a shorter amount of distance spent separated between Jack and Noah, right? Initially, back then, and it never really changed. Noah, Jack, argument, Saturday, party. Noah left directly because of that, or partially because of that, went back home, distanced himself, had a break, cooled off, washed down, had a sleep. 5 p.m. into Sunday. Quite a bit of time has passed, right? Then a call is made when Jack reaches out to Noah. Hey, come on down. It's kind of like apologising indirectly. Okay, we've had an argument day before. Let's bridge the gap. Let's get back together and have a good time. Right? That's how it was always worded. So with a fair bit of time passing by, it showed that the argument was serious enough for Noah to possibly leave for that reason, but for also Noah to distance himself from Jack for a certain length of time, for then Jack to have to reach out himself. Right? But now, because Kaden's mentioned that they were closer together earlier on, which means a smaller time difference from the argument supposedly to when they started hanging out again, it was shorter, so obviously the argument wasn't as bad, supposedly. Now, Kaden didn't even mention the argument, which was weird. Is that because he didn't see or hear it? Okay, so that's why he's not talking about it. But why did he just not make a reference? Why couldn't he have not said, or should have said, right, there was an argument, or there's claims of an argument, though I just didn't see it at the time, I didn't hear about it. Because I'm sure Kaden, when he did his Facebook statement in the past, he mentioned some details, whether that be the shower or an ATV, but adding on saying, well, he didn't see or hear any of that, wasn't really aware because he was asleep at 3 a.m. Fine, you're acknowledging that the events may or may not have happened, but you can't validate it yourself because you did not witness it. That's perfectly okay. But to completely leave it out kind of implies is because it never actually happened. And if it never actually happened, that's important in itself because it could turn everything upside down and make some things less significant than what they may have appeared to be to begin with, right? As I said, there was a lot of detail from that interview. Kaden did well to, recount as much as he knows and to do it in one sitting or, well, at least in one video. A lot to unpack, maybe with emotion as well. So I do get that. It can be demanding. It can be difficult. Mistakes can be made along the way, Maybe you give the wrong time. Maybe you're out by 10, 20, 30 minutes. Is it the end of the world? No. Is there a level of leniency and understanding as to why you may have made the odd little mistake, or what you say now is a little bit different to what you said back then, or how you word it now is different to how you worded it back then? Even if you're talking about the same exact thing, language and wording goes a long way. And if it's not consistent there, at least in language and wording, it can make it harder to see the facts and the information as consistent. It has a knock-on effect, right? When it comes to cases, when it comes to really anything, information and evidence is important, but language, wording, and delivery of it, how it's presented, is even more critical. You could have crucial information and evidence which could solve a case, and there's two individuals that present it. One uses appropriate language and wording, the other one uses reckless wording, poor language, and it's muddled all over the place. So the execution, the final delivery, doesn't hit the nail on the head by person B. But person A, that uses clear wording and somewhat consistent in how they talk, their speech, their tone, etc., translates well into the information and evidence provided, in which then that is clearly identifiable, understandable, you can follow it, you can believe in it, you can trust in it, and because the person's consistent in retelling it and how they present it, it creates that full picture. Now, are they high expectations to have when listening to like a young adult in an interview, maybe a first time ever, speaking to somewhat strangers in a way online, knowing that your face, your identity is going to be publicly out there for possible scrutiny, complaints, criticisms, negativity, etc. Maybe there's a lot of pressure and responsibility behind it, hence why you might make mistakes, you might slip up along the way. And yeah, I get that, but I mean, when I've done videos and like, let's say way back in the past, was there a level of pressure for me? Yeah, but it was only when I had an important video to do, when there was breaking news, and I kept slipping up or spazzing out with my mouth when I'm trying to say stuff or say the wrong word or pronunciation. I'm thinking, oh, for God's sake, got to redo it again and again and again. Could Kaden have redone it over and over again? Well, I mean, that interview, it wasn't a live interview. It was a pre-recorded interview, and then I think it was then uploaded as a live premiere, which is a good way to do it, right? If it's live, then everything and anything that's said, you will see. And I guess for good reason, it couldn't be done like that, because sensitive information could have been accidentally revealed by Kaden, and that may have harmed the case. So by doing those jump cuts and possible edits, that's because it's a pre-recording, meaning it can be edited, it can be polished, and then it can be more appropriate and suitable for public viewing. even if it may seem like you're missing out on stuff, it's at least appropriate, the contents, for public viewing in which it won't harm the case. Was there any other inconsistencies or wording and language by Kaden? I'm going to be honest with you, it's hard to remember it all. I do have it on paper, but I can't remember it all off the top of my head, at least. Yeah, maybe I stuck on certain points too long in my video, but I want to fully understand it, right? There's a live, raw process to my understanding. I'm demonstrating introspection, something most humans won't do. Introspection is when you explain it through, the calculations in your mind, your thought process, your patterns in thinking, how you develop, how you see things, how you perceive it, how you analyze, how you comprehend it, and where do you go from there. It's all in action. Could call it some form of abstract art through reality. So some of the stuff which people highlighted in the live chats, whilst it's pre-recorded, it just so happens in a weird coincidental way and odd timing that when somebody says or questions something in chat, I just so happen to talk about it next and respond or answer it. Yeah, I'm not live. Yeah, I'm still in sync with humans ahead of time. What's going on? It's a little bit weird. I remember in the past, on a few occasions, someone would jump into the live chat of my pre-recorded live premiere and say, hey, ref, what about this? What about that? Or ask a question or say something funny. And then I just happened to respond back directly to them. But the thing was, I didn't see or hear them at the time because I did my video. I recorded it like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours earlier into the day. That's how weird it is. The coincidence, the timing. I could say something like, right now, skeptical, you still lurking about? Does that sound? Maria, somewhere, pistol whipping, who knows? But obviously, the more natural the response is, the more accurate and likely it is to be in sync with whoever out there watching, right? I don't expect as many people to be watching this live because it's naturally done later and it wasn't planned this. So people may have to watch on catch up. But, you know, after the earlier video that I did, it wasn't fully fulfilling. It was an important one, but statistically, I guess it wasn't of majority's interest, right? So I thought, do that video still. People that find it important to themselves will seek the truth and seek the answers, which is successful. And then a video like this, something that I do here and there, and it works to catch up. Originally, I was going to do a debriefing as like a members video, but then I thought, no, because that's just going to isolate people. Of course, I could have titled it differently so it didn't appear as if people like were missing out or weren't missing out, but in the end, just do it public. It fills the gap right now because shorter video today, it feels weird doing shorter videos. So then I'm like, it's just not enough. Need to do more, right? Just because of that high performance, that consistency, that frequency. The moment you stop, there's a big gap in a way, and it feels like I'm doing something wrong. You know, if I take a break, it feels like I'm doing something wrong. If I stop covering, you know, the case, or if I stop spreading awareness and I just take a break for like a day or maybe a few hours, it feels like, no, I need to stick around. Obviously, I don't need to, I don't have to, I'm not forced to. Let's be realistic, because everybody participates or somehow gets involved by choice, of course. But, you know, I guess when you do that consistency and you're quite focused, the moment you stop and zone out a little bit, relax, it's like, oh, so much time. It's weird. It's kind of like if you do an exercise, you do it so often, then suddenly you stop, and it's like, I've got to keep going. I can't have a break. That's lazy. That's bad. But you know, you do need a rest. You do need a break. I'll be honest with you. That Kaden Pressy interview, whilst watching it, processing it on the spot, writing notes on the spot, quite demanding. To then do a video all about it and add on and analyze, pretty demanding. To then edit and upload, because things were messy in the background, the uploading, the editing, it was horrible, right? Just things like that. it was kind of problematic. And because I didn't start my video immediately, you know, when I say hi, welcome, sometimes I'm stood still like that, and then I talk, and then I cut out the start and end part. But you got to use it for a processor editor and then save it, and it takes way too long, especially if you've got big files. So sometimes I just got to start it from the get-go like this, so then there's no jump cuts, there's no editing, so it can just be uploaded as a pure raw video, and it does work. But we're doing all that, and then watching the video and listening back over to what I was saying, yeah, it was pretty draining. Not draining physically, not at all, but in the mind. If you use your mind a lot to think, to overthink, yeah, you can really exhaust yourself, and that can be anything, right? Anything in life. If you really focus in with your mind and you use your mind a lot when trying to understand something, when participating in something, physical or not, it can, you know, drain energy out of you. But granted, when you do some activities, it can actually exercise your mind, but obviously healthy amounts. An interview like that was pretty full on, okay? I don't know how people do those 5, 8, 10 hour long live streams. I don't know how people do that. But then again, I think it's because other humans rely on others all in a live stream, whereas me, I'm doing it all by myself for good reason, because it works. But whilst I do it by myself, I always have to do the talking, right? And it's not a problem, but just more energy is used up. To refer back to the Kaden Pressy situation of my video, did we get any smart arses or trying to be smart arses? You might get the odd one that pops in here and there, the odd person that tries to question me or my language and my wording. It happens with humans. I mean, kind of linking on in a way, I guess it depends how you interpret it, with Kaden at the start, where he said, well, the interviewer said, well, let's start from Friday and then talk about Saturday and Sunday. And before Kaden started explaining, Kaden jumped on in and said, well, actually, I would like to prefer to stick with just Saturday and Sunday, which basically means I'm not going to talk about Friday. Did Kaden directly say, I'm not going to talk about Friday? No, he didn't say that. What about Monday then? Well, the interviewers didn't even mention that. Kaden didn't even make reference to it either, okay? How I worded it in my video, normally I give a scenario, right? On the basis of this person, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, but not literally said by them outwards, but maybe what's within here, or in a third person tone. I didn't word it like that. I should have worded it like that, because it opened up some people coming in trying to act extra smart to try and counter me, okay? So this is the problem. I've always got to be on the defensive. I've always got to be active, because the moment I take a little rest, right? The moment I'm not perfect, bang, like that, bang, right? I've seen it. It happens, right? It's probably because of high standards as well. Higher standards, more demanding, more to maintain, more frequency, consistency, more, well, not, well, kind of more pressure, but not caused by others, but caused by oneself and one's standards. So it's what comes with it hand in hand. There are limitations with it, but, you know, that's the way I made it be. It is what it is. It's like with the Dylan Brown's case, the way I mentioned stuff and called people out. It did get to that point where I was like, okay, I can keep on doing that, but I better make sure that I don't do it myself, because I'm definitely raising the bar, I'm raising the standards, and if I start doing what I say I don't like, then that's really going to fall bad on me, okay? Maybe sometimes it's best just keeping your mouth shut with certain things, so then you don't have to force yourself to be perfect, right? Because obviously no one's perfect, and that even applies to Kaden Pressy, and we'll get to that shortly, back to the emotional connection part. But, you know, depends how you go about things. But yeah, with the interview of Kaden, where he said, I'm just going to talk about Saturday and Sunday, despite the interviewer saying, let's start with Friday. So Kaden just completely ignored and blanked it. And that seems to be a bit of a reoccurring theme and pattern with Kaden. Certain things which he may not find relevant or important because he wasn't there to witness it, because he wasn't there Friday. Okay, that's fine. But why didn't Kaden say that at least? It's the lack of acknowledgement. The lack of acknowledgement with not talking about Friday. Why do you not want to talk about it? Because you weren't there? Fair enough. But if you could at least give that in the explanation, it would have really helped, right? To not mention anything about the argument between Jack and Noah on the Saturday and that everything was perfectly fine and okay. Was it really? Or is it because you didn't see what actually happened in the background or behind closed doors? But you would have heard it. Kaden would have heard it about the argument with Jack and Noah, the falling out, right? Online on Facebook, people he knows of, yet he made no reference or word about it. But the likes of Justin Roy, granted not a party goer, but had friends of friends, family members, family of family down at the party who saw it themselves, and then information relayed on to Justin, and Justin hearing about it on the community. At least Justin Roy mentioned the supposed stories and how it switched and changed with time. Whilst it might not be concrete nor factual, and it might not give a lot of certainty behind it, it's just nice to hear about it, because we've all heard things along the way, and whether it's true or false, for it to be acknowledged in these interviews, it at least shows that those within the case, the ones you look up to and maybe trust, are also aware of the issue themselves. If they completely ignore it and blank it, then it makes us think, oh, is that because it's not important? Is that because it never happened? Why is this key individual not even acknowledging it? What are we supposed to think? And I know they've only got limited time to what they can talk about and mention, but if it's a significant event, whether it did or didn't happen, if it's a significant event within the case, it does need to be addressed and acknowledged. You don't have to be there to see or witness it, but you can at least make reference and comment about it. Even simply explaining that, yeah, I heard about it. I heard about the argument, whether that be at the time or later onwards, but I just wasn't there, so I can't really say much about it. Even just that level of acknowledgement would go a long way. That language, that wording, that delivery. And once again, maybe expectations are too high and Kaden is doing the best he can. He's not perfect, just like with everyone else. But still, in an ideal situation, let's put it like that, in an ideal world, it would have been good to hear this mention, that mention, stuff what we've heard of in the past, but it just wasn't exactly brought up in the video itself. Now, there probably would have been other things, and I just can't remember it all on the spot. You know, I was going to mention one story or one concept what we heard of, which Kaden didn't mention at all, and it was somewhat important, but I've kind of forgotten about it on the spot. But things will come and go, right? You're not expected. You know, even as a viewer, besides, you know, praising and defending and being lenient towards Kaden Pressy, right? You can be lenient towards the audience and the viewers as well. The audience aren't expected to process it all immediately in one go or remember it for the future. You can always go back to it or back and forth and bounce off from discussions, individual posts and questions. And that's what started happening on Facebook recently. But with that and certain questioning, which could be seen as undermining Kaden Pressy or seen as an insult or an attack, others are rushing to his aid and defending and calling him out. I mean, I saw one post by an individual, don't know how true it was, but they were saying how, oh yeah, I mentioned one inconsistency or something about Kaden Pressy saying something and it was questionable, and then the mother, Alicia Lee, called me a liar, even though Kaden said it himself. I don't know what that's about personally, but, you know, when you get things like that, it's normal for Alicia Lee, the mother, to defend her son, Kaden Pressy. Very normal. But this is the thing, when there's that emotional connection, there is a conflict of interest, and it can get in the way and it can blind people's judgments. What's happening right now is the equivalent of the Dylan Rounds case, where Candice Cooley was the punching bag. Everybody questioned, hounded her, criticised her, called her out for switching and changing of information, inconsistencies, and the odd contradiction. Okay, to an extent, fair enough. But Justin Rounds was seen as the golden boy, the poster boy, put on a pedestal, could do nothing wrong nor say anything wrong. Yet Justin was threatening key people in the case. Whilst yes, it's understandable, high tension, emotions running high, defending your son, wanting justice, wanting answers, suspicious of others out there who are walking about free of charge. Yeah, I get that, but you still need to control yourself as best as you can. But he didn't. He made mistakes along the way. Obviously not perfect, and that's fully understandable. But it's the reaction and response from the community, people out there, outsiders, that were like bowing down like delusional slaves. And it's like, hold on. You're going to start a witch hunt against Candice Cooley, but you're going to forgive Justin Rounds and just, turn a blind eye to that? That's one-sided. That's biased. That seems like an emotional biased connection. An agenda against one individual, and then the other person can't do anything wrong. And even when they do, you turn a blind eye. That's not how it should work. You should look at it holistically. You should look at everybody holistically. If you're going to question one, you question all. It can make you the enemy of everyone, the black sheep of the case. But if you treat everyone equally, you've got that balance, and you give time in each area with each person and section, you get a better understanding in general about everyone, their dark side, their light side, their truth, their inconsistencies, their lies, their contradictions, right? People can slip up along the way. Maybe it's not intended, but it can happen. It needs to be documented. It needs to be looked at. So what's happened in the Dylan Rounds case is exactly what's happening within the Noah Presgrove case. You got a handful of maybe questionable people in which the community are skeptical of. You got that one shining beacon of hope, that light amongst the darkness, which is Kaden Pressy. And up to a certain point, granted, he was consistent. He seemed honest, telling the truth, didn't want to cause any damage. No threatening behavior at any point, which is obviously a positive. You can definitely acknowledge that, and I will. But then that interview came about when information was mentioned which was never mentioned before by Kaden back then, which is interesting, and that certain details or times given are different to what he said previously back then. Maybe a mistake, maybe some other factors as well, but it just needs to be acknowledged as an observation. Making an observation isn't a crime, but to emotion-driven humans out there in the community, they will see it as a big deal and an attack on Kaden, when the reality is that's not the aim. The aim isn't to attack Kaden or go after him, right? If he's the one individual that can bring closure to the case, the worst thing you can do is be pushing the person away, and obviously you don't want to do that. But granted, when it came to the Kenny Veach case and some individuals coming on in, such as the sister-in-law to Kenny Veach, quite an important lead with some interesting information along the way and somewhat helpful, and yet people in the community were just pushing her away, and some could say in a disrespectful way. But people are skeptical. Skeptical is skeptical. I get it. But even if you don't like someone, you might have to work with the devil then in order to get a better outcome, to find some truth within the lies, right? Because even those that may tell lies and mess up when talking, the truth may slip out, or in between the blurred lines there may be truth within all the lies. So it's still worth just listening in. If you just brush things aside, dust people off, even if they may be trying to help or it's a bit 50-50, you just completely dismiss it, you're never going to know, right? So I saw that in the Kenny Veach case. Within the Noah Presgrove case, it seems like people are trying to preserve the truth or hold on to it as desperately as possible, because there's a lot of non-truths or not validated talk material. So desperation kicks on in. The need of protecting Kaden, which is understandable. People in the community rallying about, which is obviously good to see. But with that high tension and high emotion and then that connection with Kaden, which people in the community have, anybody else that questions Kaden, a simple question, a simple observation, a simple pointing of a contradiction, a contradictory line, or a mistake made, or the lack of acknowledgement of an event, a supposed event, then everybody roars, scratches and claws and says, oh my God, how could you do that? No, you can't do that. You can't do that. What are you trying to say? Why are you attacking Kaden? Why are you going after him? Why are you trying to twist things? Why are you a spy? You're a spy. You're within, aren't you? And it's like, calm your nips. Don't get them in a twist, right? It seems like a bit of a Dylan Rounds Mexican standoff, in which at the time when Warlight Ref defended himself against certain communities, oh, it was perfectly okay. But the moment I defended myself equally with another channel, there was some on my channel at the time who got triggered and offended. Oh, it suited you then when it didn't impact the people you looked up to, but the moment the direction turned your way, oh, you don't like it now. Oh, I'm sorry, tough shit, right? Warlight Raf, cover everyone, I question everyone. It's as simple as, should know by now, okay? I've done cleansing in recent time, believe me. Cleansing has taken place. And if further cleansing is needed in the future, believe me, that's exactly what will happen, okay? But besides that, it's important to document things along the way. Positive, negative, observations. I've seen a consistent pattern with humans. Not everybody, but those that do respond in real life, online, when I make an observation, they get defensive real quick. And it's like, shouldn't be making a big deal about it. It's just an observation. That's it. Not the end of the world. But depending on how that person reacts on a responding end, it could be interpreted it is the end of the world. So what else are they hiding? What else? What substance is behind it? The worth, the purpose of it? I wonder. But anything else to mention with Kaden Pressy? It's just that defensiveness humans may have because of an emotionally driven connection, right? Fueled by being close to Kaden or looking up and having that hope and trust. See, here's the thing, if people have been screwed over so many times in life, it can be hard to trust people in the future. So it could make you a bit stiff, a bit stubborn, and very skeptical and cautious. It's very natural. It's very normal. If you get treated like shit, it's harder in the future when around others. It is what it is. But then you do get the exceptions where bad things happen. So then the next time round you come across someone, you might be more vulnerable, you might be more hopeful, and you might put absolutely all the trust within that next individual. Even if it's not the right thing to do and it's not exactly healthy, it's because you've had enough of the BS, you've had enough of the misinformation, whatever, in a case, in life. So the next thing or the next person you come across, you see that as the be all and end all and have that high hope that this is it, that no more BS from now on, right? So maybe in the Noah Presgrove case, with all the stories and the dodgy characters within, switching and changing with stories and claims and being consistent with one another, that lacking, that then when that one individual speaks up, who is a witness within a case like Kaden, everybody finally locks in with that hope. So that if any outsiders question Kaden, these hopeful people are like, no, you can't say that. You can't say that about my Kaden. You can't say that. You can't question this. That's coming off as rude. That's coming off as an insult, an attack. Why are you harming Kaden? Why are you putting his life in danger? And it's like, it's just questioning. It's just making observations. The same exact thing you people did towards the likes of Stevie Howard, towards the likes of Jack Newton, towards the likes of maybe Isaac Rojas with that rifle in the background. Oh, was that the rifle used to kill Noah? Was he the one to kill Noah, right? There might be people out there like Isaac who, innocent, I don't know. But, 30 to 40 people at the party. Besides Kaden, there must be at least one or two other people who are completely innocent at the party, but their names may have been dragged through the mud already, or on the way to. They've been questioned, they've been criticised, theories have been made about them, but maybe it's been poorly worded by some, as we said, as facts, and people's names dragged through the mud, and what? Oh, that's okay, that's acceptable. But the moment when Kaden is in the spotlight and maybe question a negative, nope, that can't happen. Nope, it's got to be all positive. That's all it can be. Can't mention anything negative, can't question anything, can't make references, can't compare to the past and what he said then and what he says now. Nope, that's not allowed, that's off bounds. What the actual hell is going on? There's a little cowbell next to me. I just decided to ring it. Don't know why. But you get me. It seems like, okay, it's fine to question and maybe be skeptical and maybe even criticize and even come up with negative theories about people out there within the case directly or those connected somehow in the case. Okay? Is there enough evidence to say that they are guilty or responsible? Not exactly. Not yet. But you can still think, you can still compare, you can still contrast and do what you normally do. But it seems like the moment when it comes to Kaden Pressy, you're not allowed to say anything negative. It all has to be positive. And the moment that you do question those in the community, whoever they are, how many they are, unknown, but they can snap. And I just think it's a bit unnecessary. High tension, high emotion, too connected to the individual, too high hope, conflict of interest, right? When you get involved in cases, hands-on or not, sometimes it's not a good idea to be emotionally connected within the case because it could blind your judgment. There'll always be people out there that can control themselves, right? Who may be still emotionally connected or have feelings within the case, happiness, sadness, anger, frustration. Yeah, as long as you control it, that's good. But if it gets in the way of a case, it could harm it. Or when it comes to other people getting involved, trying to make sense of the situation, that could collide with the emotionally driven humans. Look, I've seen it extensively. In a way, Dylan Rounds, but more so the Kenny Veach case. And because of it, it led to people going off on one, having a tantrum, throwing the toys out the pram. Yeah, maybe it was resolved in the future, but it was unnecessary to go through, okay? But it happened. So I might come across as a bit critical of Kaden, but, you know, it's not like exclusive just to him. It's not like a witch hunt on him. If Stevie Howard did an interview and we did like a little bit of a comparison, you know, with, you know, Partners in True Crime interviewing Stevie Howard, you know, and you listened in, you analysed, you know, I'd probably be just as critical, if not more. You never know. So it's not like exclusive to one person. It's with anyone and everyone. If anyone does act up or they say something different to what they've said in the past, it needs to be acknowledged. Or if the person themselves doesn't acknowledge something which has been talked about widely in the case, and yet even if they didn't see it, for them not to mention it at all is a bit odd. And even so-called events which are deemed as not that important, that they weren't mentioned back then but they're mentioned now, well, it could be considered important. I still go back to the situation with Jack and Noah Presgrove. They had a falling out supposedly on Saturday, enough for Noah to leave and distance himself from Jack till the following day, 5 p.m. onwards. Quite some hours passing by, right? Showed how significant it was. But then for Kaden recently to say, well, actually, no, in the morning time, even though supposedly Noah made it back home to have a shower and a sleep, he was bouncing out of bed immediately, or maybe he never slept and then hung out with Kaden and the guys, including Jack. So obviously that argument wasn't as bad then, if Jack and Noah was close together again after a short spell of time passing by, compared to the 5 p.m. timestamp which was originally claimed. It's important, or maybe it's not important to other people out there, but it's important to me. You want to learn about the timeline? Well, does it compare with what's mentioned back then? Is it consistent with what's mentioned back then? And that's the problem. It's not everything is consistent with what's mentioned back then. And people can say, you're putting words into Kaden's mouth. No, what I'm getting at is there are certain things Kaden said back then which are kind of worded differently now, so that's not consistent. But the other form of lack of consistency is that details and events are mentioned now which weren't mentioned back then within the community, nor were they mentioned by Kaden. And details that were mentioned in the community back then aren't mentioned now. So what the hell's going on? If something was mentioned over and over again and it was never changed, that's consistent. It's more likely to be a fact. Not 100% all the time, but it's more likely to be. It's like the Dylan Rounds case with the gun and the key fob. There were absolute twats, people out there on YouTube, away from this channel, that were pushing the agenda of the gun and key fob being stolen by other people and then returned afterwards. It never happened. Yet the original story was always consistent, but the outsiders were hell-bent on giving a false narrative, and they weren't even there themselves. Yet they were speaking on behalf of what Justin Rounds knew and what Justin told them, yet Justin Rounds never acknowledged it. Justin Rounds, in the interview way back at the start, was giving the original story just like how Candice Cooley did, and it never really changed. And granted, the bit about, oh, was a gun and key fob stolen on this day or that day or in what order, trying to work it out, and that, oh, it was stolen, but then people are claiming it wasn't. Well, that's because of Candice Cooley in a compromising situation in which the police slipped up, revealed sensitive information public. Candice Cooley lied to try and save the case, so by discrediting it in hopes of this sensitive information could be preserved and protected despite it being leaked public by the LE's wrongdoing. So you could interpret it as Candice Cooley discredited herself in a selfless way to protect the case and Dylan's name. You could interpret it like that. But, you know, onwards, Candice Cooley did switch and change with some stuff, and the odd contradiction was made and claimed which wasn't true. That's not good, I get it, but it's just like, within a case, even if there are lies or inconsistencies, look for that one truth. And if it's not easy to find, look for that one story, that one claim, that one timestamp, which you can treat as ground zero, the foundations, the starting block from the beginning or halfway through. Use it to pinpoint onwards or work backwards. And how you look at that one thing which remains consistent throughout time and never changes, probably because there's no need to change it, because that's what happened. Is there a consistent basis within the Noah Presgrove case? Well, I've still got learning to do in the case. So like when people ask for my opinion of this and that and what exactly happened, I can't be rushing in. People could try and force me for myself to give an opinion, but if I feel like it's not the right time or I'm not ready, then I'm not going to do it. Because if I force myself to do so, I'm less likely to be right. I'm less likely to be accurate. And all that does is harm my credibility, and we don't want that. And on top, it'll just give idiots out there ammunition to use against me. So there's a time and place for everything. There's a lot more going on here, and there's a lot more people involved, okay? It'll take time. And also remember, whilst I might say a lot, or I've done a lot of videos, it's only been like so many weeks, maybe a month or two I've covered this case. Others out there have been doing it since day one. So, you know, I've done fairly well catching up, but, you know, just did what I could. So there are still many things to do, things to tick off the list. The video that I did earlier was a good example on the spot, so be sure to check it out. Top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is, should be able to find it. You can always leave comments down below under this video, like and share the video because it does help spread the awareness. I think I'll just give it a basic title for today. The only other thing to mention, resistance, as some of you will know, all stems back from the original resistance in when I defended myself against somebody else, someone you know of very well by now. It's because those people are all connected with each other in the background because they come from the same place as in the past. So they all defend and stick up for one another. I get it, loyalty, friendship, but obviously if you're on the receiving end of it, it's a 2, a 3, a 4-on-1 situation. It's unfortunate. Some out there could claim to be all about justice and helping cases and families out there, and yet they spend more time obsessing about me than doing what they originally stated what they claim to do and care about. So that really says a lot about them, more about them than me. But, you know, call it a test, call it a form of distractions, call it a form of come back here. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the bigger channel, I'm more established, more views, more stats for good reason, more experience, being around longer, you know, because I still try and integrate with everybody that comes and watches. There'll be other channels out there that will grow and then get to the point where they just completely ignore everyone who watches. right? Of course, you get to a point where you might get so popular you can't respond back to every comment, and that's very understandable. I don't expect big channels to respond to my comments out there. It's too much to handle, especially when you're making videos yourself. You may not have the time to respond back to people's comments, but if an attempt can be made up to a certain point, that's what matters most. But I guess because I might treat everyone kind of in a positive way, or at least trying to respond back to, maybe I lower my standards too low to subhumans out there who don't require a response. That's the only limitation with me. But if I'm consistent with my approach with certain things, then that's why I include it. If there's a way to detach or break from that, maybe that's what's necessary, but that needs to come natural, not forced. And maybe with the test along the way, which is coinciding with the serious stuff what I'm looking at and talking about, if I focus on the important stuff, such as like right now and videos ahead, and that's confirmed and validated by the amount of people that come on in to watch, to listen in, to comment, and maybe even be positive and support the channel, then it shows one is on the right path, in the right direction, whether that be directly close to the truth or at least closer to the understanding of the outcome or resolve of a problem within. So that typical line of there's more pressing matters at hand despite the background, of course. So did this video right now because it seems to be an ongoing theme, a pattern, a form of conflict. And don't worry, we're not going to have too many psychology or therapy sessions unless you want more therapy sessions from Dr. Raf. I mean, the door's always open, but as you can see, the door back there is a little bit stiff. It needs some oil. Does anyone have any? No? No? What a shame. But I think we'll leave it there for now. A fair bit of time's passed by. Hopefully people were able to catch this video. If not, feel free to always catch up on it tomorrow or whenever. I was aiming to upload this video as soon as possible, but depending on the time, because it is very late, I might have to push it back the following day. But whenever, it will drop and it will be live to watch, so as a live premiere. So thanks for watching. Appreciate your patience, and obviously all the new people that have come along the way, and of course the ones that have remained. Are there any spies, informants, you know, people that scuttle around in the background of my videos to pass messages on to cancer out there? I'm sure, but that's just because they've got secret obsessions with war like Raf. It is what it is. So goodbye, good night for now.